Baseball season is just about to begin, so let's talk about reasonable expectations for the 2022 Yankees. Starting off, let's talk about Kylo Goshioka. He's going to be your primary catcher, so some reasonable expectations for him would be to be a better hitter than Gary Sanchez was. We're not asking for the same power numbers, but you just want him to get on base, just want him to get some hits, just want him not to be a guaranteed out, get some guys on third, one out, get him in, stuff like that, not strike out as much as Sanchez did, because I thought personally that was my biggest issue with Sanchez, was you loved his home runs, but they always seem to come when you're down by a lot or you're up by a lot. And whenever it was a close ball game, he'd strike out and wouldn't give you anything productive. Second, let's talk about Garrett Cole. We need Garrett Cole to be good. He was good last year. He's going to have his catcher, Higashiyoka, all the time now. And he's just got to be good. We need him to be dominant. The rotation, I don't think, is very good. Like, I wish they did a little bit more for the rotation. So you need Garrett Cole to step it up. You need every fifth day when Garrett Cole's out there pitching, you need it to be a dominant day. You need that game to be almost a guaranteed win. You need, if he's going to start 30 games, 25 games, you need 20 and 10. You need, you know what I mean? You need at least something like that. You need a really good record out of him. You need him to be in the Cy Young conversation like he was last year, just because the rest of the rotation, I don't think, is that good. Next, you look at the new guys. You got Isaiah Philippa and Josh Donaldson. And what you need out of these guys is the same sort of production we got from Gio Urshela and Didi Gregorius when we brought them in. We're not asking for too much from them, but we just need that, here's a new player. They come to New York and they play really well for a year or two, and then they slowly fade off like Gio did and some other guys did, and that's why we ended up getting rid of them. And so you need just the novelty of a new player being in New York and them to get some jobs done. I really like Donaldson. The biggest thing with him is his health. I like him a lot. I've liked him a lot for a while. I think he provides a good edge with the way he is. And I like Philippa with his defense. I really think those two are going to do well together. That's the left side of the infield. And I hope health is never going to be a concern for them, because that's something the Yankees have struggled with in the past, is health issues. And to talk about the rest of the team for their expectations, I think the overall expectation of this team is to make the playoffs. It's expanded now. You got a 12-team playoff, so that's definitely the bar, is that this team has to just at least make the playoffs. I'm not going to go crazy and think they're going to make a World Series run or even a deep playoff run, because they're just not that type of team. They definitely have moves to be made if they want to be that type of team, but this is by far a better roster than we were rolling into the season last year. Not talking about starting pitching. Starting pitching last year was a little bit better with Kluber. They really haven't added much. They're still hoping that Severino is good, and really haven't seen much optimism towards that. But as far as the entire roster goes, just having Rizzo and Gallo in there, the big moves you made at the deadline last year, they're going to help a lot. You've now got some lefties. You added Josh Donaldson, a guy with an edge. Philippa is a good defender, but you do have an interesting situation with DJ and Glaber and just that infield of who's out, who's not playing a game, and with Hicks in center field, because Stanton's going to be your DH, and it's another concern of who's going to miss the most amount of games. Like, is Hicks going to get injured? Hopefully nothing happens to Judge or Stanton, like something like that. So who's going to get injured? Because the team is set up where as soon as someone gets injured, someone else is like DJ LeMahieu who's going to step up, a guy who is in an American League MVP conversation for the past couple of years. So it's really interesting to see who's going to, I don't want to say who's going to get injured, but who's going to step up if something happens, or who's going to take over. Like, if Gleyber Torres struggles, they insert DJ, or Isaiah Philippa struggles and Gleyber moves back to shortstop. Like, what's going to happen that's going to make things interesting? Because things aren't going to go as planned. If you're a Yankees fan, you know that nothing ever goes as planned when we talk about what we expect for the team this season. But as far as this team right now, I think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're making a deep run. I feel like, very reasonable. You got to finish third in your division. I think Tampa and Toronto are going to beat you, but you got to be ahead of Boston. I think they're a better team than Boston. And as a Yankee fan, that's your expectation. You have to be better than Boston. So moving forward towards the later of the season, they definitely got to make a move, because, as the Yankees always know, we don't want to be just making the playoffs. We don't want postseason appearances. We want to win the World Series. We haven't done it in a while. Cashman's made his comments. I'm not going to talk about that. Not a fan of Cashman, but moving forward, the trade deadline, you got to add starting pitching, and I really want to see him trade one of these shortstops that they've been holding on to for so long. I feel like they hold on to players too long. I'm not going to move Jason Dominguez, but I mean, I would if I have to. I would really like to go and get Brian Reynolds, because I don't think Aaron Hicks is that good. And as much as I like Jason Dominguez, I think by the time he's ready to play, you've wasted the great years of Judge and Stanton that you may have left, or at least Stanton. Judge will have more years left, but the guys are getting older, and if you're just holding on to younger players for the future, the guys that you have now aren't going to be think they're not going to be what they are now. Like, how many years of Garrett Cole being dominant are you going to have? So by the time you bring up your elite shortstop prospects, Anthony Volpe, Osvaldo Peraza, and Dominguez in center, maybe you don't have Garrett Cole, and now you need a new ace. So, like, just use those guys to get guys that you can fill the holes. Now, I think Brian Reynolds switching to center fielder from Pittsburgh is a really good addition to make. I would try to trade Hicks in that deal just to get him off the payload, off the roster, because Hicks has just been not very healthy in recent seasons, and even when he is, not very productive, or if you have to send him somewhere else. But I'd give Pittsburgh what they need. Like, maybe I'm giving him an extra prospect just so they can take Hicks's contract away from me. But that's a move I'm looking to make at the deadline. And now, if Hicks is balling and the whole team is playing great, I'm keeping everybody, if it just worked out for some reason. But I would like to go get Brian Reynolds, make a big splash there, and then whatever I have left, I'm going to find another starting pitcher to add. Like, I really wanted one of the guys from Oakland, Sean Manaea, Frankie Montas, one of those guys. If maybe we can still pull that off at some point in the season, they haven't yet. But if they want to get over the hump and be a World Series team, compete with Tampa, because that's the biggest challenge, I'd say, in the American League, is if you can beat Tampa. They've put together a bunch of good seasons. Houston's in that conversation as well, but they lost Correa, so maybe they'll take a step back. But I think right now Tampa's the team to beat, and Toronto's up there too. Like, you're not even gonna be. We're not even considering them winning the division, and everybody wants to see a World Series. That's just what we expect. So you got to compete with the teams ahead of you in your division. That's Tampa, that's Toronto, and you got to make some big moves because they're well ahead of you. I think there's a considerable gap between those two teams and you, and that makes it much more important for the Yankees to be able to beat Boston and be able to beat Baltimore, because if they're going to struggle with Tampa and Toronto, they do it every year, no matter how bad Tampa and Toronto are. They just struggle to beat those teams, and I think now that these teams are better, it's not going to get easier for them. So if they want to expect to win a World Series, to make it to the World Series, they got to make moves. And I think Brian Reynolds is a really good move. If you got to send Glaber in that deal, I would be more than willing to do that just to give DJ LeMahieu his spot at second base back. But number one thing is you need to stay healthy. And I know it's tough to say because every team needs to stay healthy. But you got to make moves for guys that maybe have less injury history, like Brian Reynolds. Like, we know Hicks is injury prone. We know he's had his issues in the past. Same with pretty much the rest of the roster. So get guys that are in better health. Someone like Brian Reynolds is that, just because he's less power, more speed and contact, and those guys tend to stay healthier more often. Same thing with your rotation. Get guys that are control pitchers. They don't have as many injuries as your power pitchers. So those are my expectations for the Yankees. Let me know what you think. Let's go Yankees.